great.
It's as good as either one.
Yeah, looks
I've
great.
known this was happening.
This is our
Get up
AP
with all
Lang
people.
education panel. Here are our panelists. They're going to introduce themselves in just a second. I do want to remind you all that you're required to take notes on this, and they all know that you're supposed to be taking notes. But we've talked about good note-taking skills when you are engaged in something like this, which is, something that probably you do more than taking notes from a book, right? Is going to a meeting or sitting in a lecture or, just taking notes for your use down the road from something like this. And we need to make sure that we stay engaged. So to get started, I'll ask Mr. Woodke to start us. They're going to tell you who they are and their titles, and then you guys will feel free to ask questions for about 40 minutes or so.
Hello, everybody. Just make sure they're awake here. It's the end of the day. I'm Mr. Woodke. I serve as your associate principal here at Southport. This is my 9th year at Southport High School.
Hi, I'm Joe Horvath. I serve as the assistant principal in the main office here at Southport, and this is my 11th year here.
My name is Matt Weimer. I'm an assistant principal in student services. It's my first year here at Southport.
I'm Sara Kohne, as many of you know. I'm English teacher turned librarian this year, and this is my 21st year at Southport. Yeah.
And Mr. Weimer didn't tell you, but he was a Southport grad as well.
Mm-hmm.
25 years ago.
Yes.
I didn't say that. He did.
And 3 out of the 4 of us up here were English teachers.
You're
And
welcome.
I'm not
Yes.
old enough to have had him in class.
So don't ask.
Yes.
Now it's your turn. You get to ask us.
Jackson Petty, start us off. Let's go.
He knows your name.
I don't have a question. Phone a friend.
Go for it. You go for it.
I'll go ahead. How often do you see that administration looks at foreign school systems to get an example of how to improve Southwood High School and the Prairie Township school system overall?
That is a great question. I would say pretty close to never. Now, there's a reason why. I would say, we look at different models from everywhere. But a majority of the time, what we do in the building, we will use these pieces of information to plan and to grow programs and to do things like that. But in reality, that is almost like a larger level than what we do in this building. That's almost more programming from a higher perspective, because you have to imagine we have 2 high schools in this district, and since we do have 2 high schools in this district, we try to align ourselves as much as humanly possible with that other high school, and that alignment doesn't necessarily come from Mrs. Boone and Mr. Bodecker talking. It comes from the higher ups above us, like Mrs. Pollard, Mr. Knight, Mr. Spencer, and they help to bring us together to align those things. Now, we do look at other models, like, for example, Mr. Weimer can talk to you a little bit about what he's doing with the University of Chicago and some things within discipline. And we look at different things from across the states, but we also partner with other NIET schools, which is our evaluation system. And we look at different models that they're using, and we use their type of research. I've taught internationally, and so there are things that I've brought in from my practice teaching internationally, but nothing that has significantly impacted the school.
I would add on to that the farther away you get from Indiana, the more the laws are different. And so we can't necessarily look at a lot of international styles because the rules we have to follow are just too different to allow for that.
Good question.
You should call somebody else.
Okay. Lily, give me a question.
I was going to call it on her if you didn't. So.
That Lily.
Okay. What do you guys think is the best way that sex education should be taught? And do you guys think that classes should be separated by gender?
Do we think classes should be well, I'll start with that side of it. Sex education classes specifically? It's a good question.
You mean as a separate class or part of a health curriculum?
Just separate it as genders, the boys are taught how everything is good and the girls are taught differently.
So kind of the way you're asking your question, and my response is going to be into the way that you're asking your question. It seems like you're almost talking about certain mandates that you want to put on particular styles of classes or the certain type of content being taught. And Mr. Woodke said it the best, I think, first period. When you talk about mandates, you're kind of introducing this idea of controversy. Okay? So when you're thinking like that, I don't know if that's a question that I would be able to answer. Personally, do I think there should be some sort of sex education brought into a curriculum? If I had a student in the school, yes, I would want my student to go through that. But that's a very unique question, and it's also very based upon parents' responses and district responses and things along those lines. And I don't think I would be equipped to say that a parent has to have their student sit in that type of an education. Would I want my kid in that? 100% I would. However, that's not something I would want to mandate for everybody because, again, it starts to breed controversy and arguments.
I think separating genders, if I might jump in, also creates some controversy because, I mean, we're at the point in society where we don't just think in terms of two genders. There's gender fluidity to take into consideration, and I don't know that, or at least, there are many people who believe that there are more than two genders. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think you're creating, by doing that, that's creating a whole world of questions and issues that you don't have to.
Correct.
Very good.
How much do parents impact like curriculums at school?
I know we have community stakeholders that we will bring in to discuss certain things, but in my experience teaching, I have very rarely had a parent interact with my particular curriculum when I was teaching English here. So I would say very little on my end as it pertains to kind of the high school model. I can't answer that for middle school or elementary because they're different buildings and I just don't know what that looks like there. But I would say from my end, very little. We've had parents question sometimes what we do and why we do the things that we do. But again, I think that also lends to the approach of how you speak to a parent. If you go into that conversation as, well, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, you're not bridging a gap there. Our goal as teachers is always try to bridge the gap between what we're teaching, why we're teaching it, have the reasons why we're teaching it, and then bring the parent along with us on that journey as opposed to having the parent kind of stonewall us. Anybody else?
No.
Good answer, Joe.
Yeah.
I've had, I mean,
So you're the closest to the classroom,
yeah,
I guess.
I mean,
so.
I mostly I felt support from parents, yes,
Yeah.
in terms of what I'm teaching and why, I remember some of your parents coming to back to school night last year, and as now a librarian, I am maybe even more sensitive even than I was as an English teacher in terms of materials I use, but I think resoundingly parents are more supportive, even if I felt it extra important to explain what I was doing with the curriculum and like my text choices, for instance. I think resoundingly most parents are very supportive and trust educators. Now you're seeing a lot, you see a lot of people who don't as well. But from personal experience and in Perry Township, I feel like we have pretty supportive parents in terms of that, and that there are fewer people than you think making more noise in terms of that kind of thing. That's
a great answer.
I know you said that parents don't really have a curriculum, but you also said that they're very supportive. Do you think they should be more involved? Because I know there's some stuff about like in other states about like moms for the movie or whatever with family and stuff, and like trying to influence the curriculum more.
For me, when it's about like getting rid of something or banning something like that's when you hear a lot in the news. Like it's about what we don't want. Very rarely do I get, or did I, as a classroom teacher, or even in this role, get feedback about things they want included. It's about what they want excluded when those controversies come up. So even in those situations, I'm not sure how much parents are really interested in influencing the curriculum to help students learn more. It's about, I don't like that. And our focus is about how do we get kids learning. And when you're coming at it from that way, it's just a different conversation.
I think there are always, most teachers are also very willing to accommodate students who might object to certain materials or whatnot if the student just asks or the parent just asks. If I were reading a whole class novel with all my students and a parent did not want the student reading it, I would offer an alternative and include the parent in that decision-making process. And I mean, I think that's the important way to do, to do it. I don't think, parents should be able to have a say on what their student reads and doesn't read, or to a certain degree doesn't do. I mean, we have state requirements. That's what the state standards are, right? But I think including them in that process, if there are some objections, is important. And I think they shouldn't get to decide what everybody else does or does not do either.
I also think it's about the approach that you have in the classroom. I was always extremely transparent when I was in the classroom about what was being read. I would have permission slips sent home just in case someone did object about something. That would allow me to have like actual documentation that there was an objection in place. So anything that I did, I tried to do with extreme transparency. But in terms of, do we need or want more feedback from parents? I mean, we're always welcoming feedback from parents, but a lot of times we get very little. And I think what Mr. Weimer said kind of hit the nail on the head is we always get what's wrong. We never get what else we could or should do.
The thing is, you have to be very careful when you use the word parent as well. I want to discuss with a parent who has a child in this building about what's going on in this building. A lot of what you're seeing on the news is parents discussing with school board members or a school board or teachers who don't have children in that building. We will work with all of the parents here, but I don't know if it's that other parent's right to fight for another child sometimes. Those parents should be involved whose kids go to that school with that school board and those teachers. So yeah, just saying you're a parent, make sure it's the right parent, and we want to hear from the right parents. So if your parents that you're here every day, you know what goes on, we'll work with your parents.
There are also many ways parents can get involved besides the curriculum. And, I go to the doctor and I might get feedback, in terms of what's happening to me or whatnot. But ultimately, I trust them to do what they need to do in order to make me well.
Yeah.
I, as a teacher and an educator, I would appreciate that same respect. I'm, we're all the experts. Yes.
Loosely.
Ish.
I show up. Yeah.
You're joking.
Do you guys find the current way in which Southport disciplines students adequate in preventing kids from repeating bad behavior like skipping class or other worse behaviors?
Let's you start with that one.
We're always trying to find better strategies, better ways to get the outcomes that we're after, which ultimately is for every student to learn, grow, and graduate. That being said, we have to follow the laws. We have to do what we are required to do. And so we have our guideposts. We have our, where our end zone is. Do I wish we had more tools and more ways to help kids? Absolutely. I will always wish that, no matter how many tools and ways we get. That being said, when it comes down to it, bad choices are a student's choice and it's their decision. And we can try and influence that. We can try and educate as to why they should make better decisions. But ultimately, if they keep making the same choice over and over again, we have to do what we have to do to keep this environment safe for everybody else and make sure that the people that are here to learn and grow have that opportunity. So yes, I wish we could do more. I'm always going to wish we could do more, even when I have to say goodbye to those students that are no longer welcome. But there also comes that point where we have to make that decision. And that's the hard part of the job, but it's the job.
School discipline is one of the greatest paradoxes I've ever had in my career. Because in a lot of ways, when you have that student, because all three of us have been in the dean's office, we have all done the discipline. So with that being said, when you have the student in front of you, what you're trying to do is get through to that student about the choices that they're making and that their effect on others. But ultimately, there's another side of me that goes straight to that utilitarian perspective where I need to do the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. And if that means removing that student from education, which is not the best for that kid, but is better for all of you, we have to make those tough decisions. And those sometimes are the worst decisions that keep you up at night. Because those bad kids sometimes, bad quote unquote bad kids sitting in front of you, sometimes are the nicest people you have ever met.
And in 6 to 8 years are different humans. I mean, people change.
2 to
Everybody
3
changes.
years sometimes.
Yeah. I mean,
Sometimes the next year.
This is kind of a personal question, but like, do you guys feel it's fair that if students don't bring their IDs or lanyards, it's fair for them to get written up and they go on their records and stuff? Even if they're like a good student, they just happen to forget it that day. Do you think it's fair?
Do you think it's fair to go driving around without a driver's license, although it is a state mandate that you have one? See, that's where you get into with those type of questions. Like, it's a rule from Southport High School. Is it a rule that is going to, in the ultimate end, hurt your education if you don't have your ID and lanyard that day? No. But sometimes we have to follow rules that are arbitrary, and learning to follow those rules that are arbitrary and understanding the consequences that go with them. That's just how it works.
and it's for your benefit, although you don't probably understand that in the moment.
I would also add that the word fair isn't a word that applies to real life all that much. The world isn't fair. It's never going to be fair. We're not all billionaires sitting in this room with Lamborghinis. Like, that's just the way it works sometimes. And sometimes you just have to do what you have to do and conform to the rules and the norms. Everybody's wearing shoes, right? Do you need shoes? Will you die if you don't have shoes? No, but it's a norm. It's what we do, right? So if I come to school without shoes, is it fair that I get told, no, you can't be here without shoes? It's just a norm. The ID falls under the same thing. Like, you're supposed to bring it. So if you don't, you know what happens.
Socks, on the other hand.
Can I
do
ask a clarifying question on that
hate
one?
socks.
Sure.
Isn't it true also that like if a student, and I'm asking, I just don't know, if a student is quote written up or referred for a lanyard or something like that in the first time, it's just administrative, right? Like it just goes in the file and there's no action after that?
Yeah, literally, we code that for file so that we can start to see and track if there's a pattern of this behavior or if it's just a one-off. If it's the one time you ever forgot it and you end up with a write-up in Skyward, it's literally not going to impact you at all in any way ever. If you do it 15 times in 15 days, we're going to be annoyed because we're the ones that keep having to do the exact same thing and have the same conversation over and over again. And so, yeah, most of it is just for documentation. If it's a one-off, then it's not a big deal.
If an 18-year-old non-student was walking around this building causing issues and caused an issue with you or a friend of yours, you think your parents would be upset about that? How do I know they don't go to school here? There's 2,400 of you. They won't have one of these, I'll tell you that. So, has there ever been anybody in this building that hasn't belonged? Yes, there has. This is for your safety and ours. But things like that are for a safety reason. That's why we have speed limits. They don't want us to drive 100 miles an hour everywhere we go. If we didn't have speed limits, we probably would, So it's for our safety. But yeah, it benefits us to know that you're part of Southport High School. We want you here. We want you safe while you're here. So those are the things. Those are why those type of rules are in place.
It's also why we wear them. So the adults in the building are the adults that are supposed to be here in the building.
And if you need something, you could go to anybody with a lanyard because they work here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have two questions.
Uh-oh.
Is it a double question or is it two separate questions?
It's like related.
I'm just, go ahead.
How do you think low salaries affect teachers' ability to afford professional development opportunities and resources for their classroom?
the school district works very hard to provide professional development opportunities to teachers so that they don't have to go into their own pockets. There's a lot of funds dedicated to that, a lot of resources, a lot of planning and implementation of professional development to make sure teachers are growing without needing to find that themselves and go into their own pocket for it. That being said, yeah, it'd be great if everybody in education got paid a lot more than they do. But at the same time, that's not why anybody goes into education. There's not a single person that got into teaching and goes, man, I thought I was going to get rich off this. Like, that's just not the motivation. It's not. I'm sorry, Woodke, if I just...
You should have told me that.
I should have. So would it help? Sure. But that's not why we do what we do.
And I think that question, I've worked in 3 different school districts, and this school district does a phenomenal job of trying to give teachers what they need. We can't always make it happen, but I have worked in school districts where supply money is very, very limited for teachers, and they do use their own money and own funds to buy things for their classrooms. So I think that's a district-to-district question on how school finances are budgeted, and I would hope we're at the top end of that, trying to get teachers what they need as best we can.
And school finances are very strict as it pertains to like state law. And so there is a lot of law that goes into how we can budget and what we can do with certain accounts and how accounts work. We can't steal from Peter to pay Paul. We can't take from one account to put into another account. There's lots of different finance law that goes into school finance. So it is a very, very tricky dance. But as Mr. Woodke said, I think our school district does a very adequate job in making sure that our teachers have the basics of what they need.
I do think, I would agree with everything they're saying, but I do think that there is also an importance to get out there as an educator and see what other people are doing, and to go to conferences and workshops outside of the school district as well. If you're a professional in education, it's so important because, we're certainly versed in the TAP model here. Yes. But, there are other schools doing other cool things, and, there's more we could be doing. There's always more we could be doing. And so I think it's really important to see what other schools are doing. And I think that teachers need to see that as well.
Yes. I would love to send all of our teachers to any conferences that they would ever want to go to. I think that would be the dream.
They're a lot of fun too.
Yeah. However, we would have nobody in the building to teach you. And then, yeah.
There's always a conference somewhere.
Yeah.
My second question is, how do you think low salaries affect the perception of teaching as a viable long-term career option for individuals who are interested in the profession? And if you were to motivate them to enter the profession, how would you do so?
I think there's a reason that there's a teacher shortage in the world today. It's hard to find people going into that industry because of the perception that it doesn't pay well. I don't think necessarily everybody understands. The pay is not bad. It's just not as high as you would expect for the amount of education you need to get the job.
And the amount of work you do on a daily basis.
Right. So you're not, well, I was not going hungry. I can't swear nobody in education has ever gone hungry. You're not destitute. It's just you're not driving BMWs or living the life like a doctor or a lawyer might. But I think the perception is what's causing the teacher shortage. If I do that, it's not worth it. But you get paid in a lot more than just money in this job. Those moments, those wins with kids when you see them grow, in a lot of ways, as cheesy as it sounds, that is the reward and the payoff for this job in a lot of ways.
I would also argue that it's not just low pay that is affecting the teacher shortage. Certainly policies and laws that have come to be or are, presently being worked on. Certainly, I think those play into people's decisions about whether or not to teach or whether or not to teach in particular states. And
there was an interesting implication within your question that kind of led to the idea that money equals respect. And when you are in this position, that implication goes out the window, because I don't feel respected because of my salary. I feel respected because of the impact that I have had on certain individuals. I mean, for example, last night we was at the Perry versus Southport basketball game. I saw one of my favorite students I ever had from 2017, and just the conversation that the two of us had meant more to me than you slipping me $100 bill right now. And I know that sounds cheesy as well, but it was true. You had a question.
Oh yeah, my question is like, are there like books that like have been banned from like the main school library, and like what thought goes into that?
Historically, yes, there have been books that have been challenged and been removed, not under my current short time.
Tenure.
Yes, I didn't feel comfortable using that word yet. It was there, but I have not seen it yet. Certainly, there are procedures in place for a challenge, but I have not seen them. So, but I do welcome. I mean, if parents have questions, I do welcome them to call me and we can talk about it. And certainly, there are ways for me to like put in Destiny, which is our system, right? Our system, our cataloging system. There are ways for me to put notes if a parent does not want a student to check out a particular title. I could put notes that if the student tries to check out the title, a big pop-up will come up and say, the student is not allowed to check out that book. Yes. So parents could make requests like that if there's a particular book in circulation that they don't want their students reading. But I firmly believe that, it's about that dialogue and that conversation. And hopefully that we could come to an agreement and work out a situation if a parent is concerned about a book outside of, them putting in a formal challenge, because then that book is removed or has the potential to be removed for everyone. And my values are different than your values, are different than Samantha's values. Yes. And so I don't want to dictate what Lily can read. Yes. If your parent challenges a particular title because Lily's values might mesh with that, or yes. And, I don't want to read everything that's reflects my own values. I want to read about people who think differently than me, and learn differently than me, and do things differently than me, because that's how I learn.
Yeah.
So
No point in being educated in a silo.
So my question is, do you think U.S. military branches should be promoted during high school? And if so, what are the potential benefits of introducing that military programs in high school?
Mr. Woodke had a great comment about this earlier.
That question is kind of introduced versus having like a full cadet program. So there are ways that there could be full cadet programs that are actually sanctioned, you could say, implemented by the military, or it could be introduced. I know even in our preparing for college and careers classrooms, that's going to be a part of, you can go to college, you can enter the workforce, and the military is also another option. So that's going to be an avenue to get to. There are benefits to the military. There's benefits to college. There's benefits to the workforce. All those are options. There's also negatives to each one of those as well. So should it be introduced in high school? It's an option after high school. So yes, that would be my question. The military does have some great benefits. It's a risk versus reward as well, just like any other position. So I don't know if you any in depth on that, but there are some great benefits to the military. I've had family members in the military, but you have to know what you're signing up for as well.
And then when you think about it, the reality of high school is to educate the whole child, not just to segment them down one path and say, this is what you're doing, which is kind of counterintuitive to graduation pathways, but I don't want to go that way. But when you think about it, though, you really want to educate the whole child. So you want to give them the option of choice. And so bringing that in is just another level of option of choice, I believe, for a student, because for some kids, that really resonates well. For other kids, just seeing that is a complete turnoff. And it's the same with our teaching staff. Some teachers will be like, yeah, right on, military. And there's others that are like, no. Like, do you know the ramifications? And so there is that unique quality of everything we do within a high school where we try to give the students every opportunity they can get so you can gravitate towards what's the most interesting for you. So it falls into that almost like personal side to yourself and what you value.
And have you had students join like the National Guard, just 17-year-olds? Do it this year, or like in past years have you had students?
I have when I was teaching.
We have before, but I don't know about this year exactly.
I had a student that enlisted at 17. I mean, I've had many over the years. He decided to go career after he did his first 4, and he's still in. He's now an officer, finished college through the GI Bill while still serving, and he made it his life. He signed up to get free college and found something that he was passionate about and loved doing. Now he's a leader, he's a father, he's a family man. He married another former student of mine. And then I've had other students go that route and it not turn out real well. I actually had a student not long after he enlisted turned up dead on an Army base. That lifestyle did not work for him, obviously. And then I've had other students that do their 4 years, get their benefits, and leave. So, I mean, it's not right or wrong. It's right or wrong for you. It's how long are you interested in serving? How long do you want to do this and make this a part of your life? Beyond that, it's not for us to get involved in the politics of the bigger picture. We're here to help you all figure out what you want your lives to be.
And we do have the military branches in at lunch. You've probably seen them at lunch. We also have multiple universities and colleges in. We also
Driver ed.
We have driver's ed. We also have a career fair. We also have a job fair. I mean, so we try to encompass everyone and what are the options that are out there.
Yeah.
So if we had a later start time, like at 8 or like at least 7:50-ish, do you think you would see a greater attendance in kids who skip class to sleep in instead to going to school?
I'll answer that, but personally, no, absolutely not.
I don't think so.
I've worked in 2 corporations that had a later start time, and I would say the data on that would probably be exactly the same. Probably. I don't think that's a factor of student decision making. Maybe a few kids later because of sleep and things. We don't get enough sleep. I mean, that's a definite. Our activities for you guys at the high school level are still the same time. If you're involved in the choir concert, band, orchestra, start time 7:30. That's going to be a late night. If you have track or basketball, baseball, those are still evening events. So that is a struggle. Plus, you're trying to do all your clubs, your activities, your homework. I think the early start time does not benefit you. But as far as a discipline or a skipping issue, I don't know if that's the reasoning.
I would say, even if some people are telling themselves that's the reason, they'll tell themselves that's the reason 2 hours later in the day too.
Yeah, we could start at noon and they'd be like, oh, well, I don't have that much left in the day, so why should I go?
Or they'll just readjust the sleep schedule. Like if you're going to make excuses, you're going to find a way to make excuses. And if you're not, you're going to find a way to step up and do what needs to be done.
Well, and it might benefit people who do already do that, who do already step up. Sleep is important.
Yeah,
like, don't get me wrong. In a perfect world, why not start a little later? But at the same time, like
three-tiered busing.
Yeah, we're the oldest group. Logistically, we got to get middle schoolers and elementary school kids to school too. And you guys are the oldest and most mature, so you get the harder time to start because you can.
But you'll be thankful when you have an 8 a.m. class in college and you're like, oh, I started high school at 7:10. This is great.
I can sleep in. You sleep until 7:30.
Yeah.
But Lily, if you are interested in the topic, or if you're writing about school start times and sleep and whatnot, read an article called Sleep Debt and the Mortgaged Mind. Because sleep debt is a serious issue and has caused some catastrophes.
I struggle with it all. You guys are very involved, and we have at your age, you're all late events. I mean, but you're still the first ones up to go to school, and we want you to be educated and be awake and to be ready to go at 7:10 for that math class or English class. And most of our staff, I'd say our teachers, they understand that. Like, they know that's tough. Because some of you are involved in multiple things, which we appreciate, but it makes it hard on you on a Thursday at 7:10 in the morning.
difference in like the performance of students or like effort compared to like a first period class and the last period of the day?
I'm sorry. I can't hear. What did you say? Can you say that
A
louder?
little louder.
So would you guys notice a difference like the performance and efforts of students between like a first period class or like the last period of the day?
I can tell you from a teacher's perspective, that's why I enjoyed having a first block off or a last block off, because I think those are the worst two times to teach.
Mhm.
I liked teaching in the middle because I think the students were more engaged. Now that is a blanket statement because every kid is different. I may be more of a morning person. Okay, that's not true. But Mr. Horvath might perform better at 2 in the afternoon. You
Yeah.
know, it's. I think that is very individualized with the person.
Right. Also, let you in on a little secret in terms of like teaching. It depends what class you have. Because I remember when I would teach AP literature first period, I would be so angry because those kids were like you. They were constantly either working, they were involved in something or whatever. And here it is at 7:10 in the morning, and I'm trying to get them to understand something, and we're talking and we're trying to have a conversation, and they're staring at me. And I know it's because they're tired, and I know it's because they just can't engage yet. They're not mentally awake enough. They're sucking down coffee, they're sucking down caffeine, they're trying to do everything they can just to stay awake. And it's not because I was boring, at least I tell myself I wasn't boring. But the fact of the matter is, it would annoy the hell out of me. The other side of it is, one year I would have general level freshman English first period, and they were silent, and I loved it because they weren't yelling at me or each other or anything along those lines.
They were too tired to do
Yeah,
that.
they were too tired to yell at me. So with that being said, it really depended on the class I had. And that's my own selfish reasoning behind teaching.
There's so many factors that it'd be hard to judge performance just due to time factor as the only indicator, I think.
Yep.
I'm pretty certain some of these folks saw me have a meltdown or two first period.
You?
Sure.
But we
Never.
We won't talk
Silas is
about
over there
that.
laughing. Yeah.
What else you got?
I want to get them out of here a little bit early because at the end of the school day stuff, but we have about 3 or 4 more minutes for questions. So what else we got?
Go ahead.
So my topic is sex education, and in Indiana, it's not mandated, so there isn't there's some guidelines, but there's not really a curriculum. So in the instance where there isn't really a curriculum, how would you go about teaching that? How would you decide? Would you only follow the loose guidelines, or how would you decide what to go with them?
Well, we are mandated to follow any legal guidelines that the state of Indiana puts out. So there are things that we are not permitted, cannot teach, cannot include in a curriculum. But with that subject, we would most likely, in my experience anyway, in other places, we would rely on organizations of experts that make that curriculum and that we would deliver based on, they're looking at the framework of the laws when they build it, and we deliver it because we know it conforms to the laws, and then that would be how it's presented.
I also think with any curriculum, it's important that multiple perspectives are represented, and so I think the same goes for probably that as well. Even though I wouldn't even begin to know or pretend how to develop a sex ed curriculum, but
Yeah.
I mean that's teaching 101.
Yep.
Yep.
Kind of related to the question, how do they determine if what they're teaching is considered appropriate? Because it can be subjective sometimes. Like, how do they determine if it's it should be allowed or it's too?
Well, going back to those laws, there are things that are just not allowed in public school. Can't talk about it, can't teach it. Beyond that, I think usually the curriculums I've experienced are very factual, science-based, and intentionally avoid the subjective aspects of the subject.
Unlike within English, where we try everything to make it subjective because we want you to think in multiple perspectives. Yeah, go ahead.
What are your foreign school systems? So, how do other school systems or college influence Southport area?
I mean, historically, I think a lot of like the high school framework for like moving from class to class, you don't have one teacher all day. Like a lot of that is designed to help get you ready for the college experience and that world where you're not meeting every day at the exact same time, but you're responsible for getting where you need to be at the time you need to be there. Beyond that,
Yeah. I don't know if much. Like, for example, I was an exchange student when I was in high school in Germany. So I went to high school in Germany for a while. And the one thing that I noticed is they have flaws in their education system just as we have flaws in our education system. For example, they take a test in fourth grade. That test allows to figure out what you're going to do basically with the rest of your life. If you're in fourth grade and you test at a certain level, you can go to high school, but you're not going to college. You're mandated to go to a vocational school. If you test this, you're mandated to go to this high school, and then that's called the gymnasium, and then you can go to a college, and then there's another test that would label you as almost special education, and you're not going much farther than high school. And so, I mean, there's those pros and cons in every foreign education system along with the American education system, and it really is just, trying to navigate the best you can while you're going through them.
I student taught in Ireland, and they have a very similar system. Your seventh grade year, how you do on your test determines what options you will have for your future. Like, period. That's it. No conversation after that. If you don't score high enough, you're not going to be a doctor. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And seventh grade is really early to be making those calls, but that's how that system is built.
In New Zealand's a little different. When I did some work there, like you start school on your 5th birthday. It's a big celebration. So it's like your kindergarten year, but they think we're idiots because we start a bunch of kids who've never been in school ever, have no idea about school on the same day at 5 years oldish or so. So their idea is on your 5th birthday, you come to primary school and you kind of blend in because the rules and expectations are already set and you kind of follow the crowd. It's not 100 elementary or kindergarten kids starting school the same exact day. So they start throughout the year, and then you have to pass certain requirements to leave like kindergarten through 2nd grade. It's all taught together, kind of like one-room schoolhouse. So there's a lot of different models out there, and it's cool because you've heard a lot of perspectives of things we've seen in other countries.
And your paper sounds fascinating. Can I read it, please, when you're done?
It's a lot of pressure. You just have
Yeah.
Oh no, you finish it.
Yeah, that's not an option now.
No.
Sorry.
I was thinking you know how we have like certain books we have to read in like certain like English classes. Like, do you guys know like the reasoning why we have to read those certain books?
There's an eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Yeah, we basically just throw them all up. We throw it, whatever one lands on top is the one we read.
How can we most torture you?
Yeah.
That's
When
how
I-
we decide.
When I was a student here, the argument I'd always get is these are the books they'll expect you to have read already when you go to college. As college is not that was the 90s, so everybody just college all the time, and that was the only part of the conversation. As we've gotten away from that, and we've opened up these other options, and it's become okay to talk about again. I think it's about what's going to challenge the students, but still be engaging. What's going to be relevant to
Shows
them.
multiple perspectives.
Perspective
What's
is
going to
very
get them
important.
to think on a deeper level and in ways maybe they haven't had the opportunity to think before. And then it's how do we make sure that everybody is getting the best possible experience? And so then you have to have conversations amongst different teachers to come to a consensus and agree on what books. It gets complicated.
And I feel like everyone should read Shakespeare because I love it.
I had a different school of thought when I was a high school student.
Thank you very much for being here. It's 5 till. Are we sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
One more.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys would know this, but
We don't.
I'm a moron.
What would their repercussions be if the teacher displayed or wore anything political?
Depends. Teachers are human beings. They have a right to express themselves. That being said, they're also government employees. And so we aren't supposed to necessarily proselytize or prop one view system up over another. That being said, like the legal standards in the country and does that mean I'm proselytizing if I hang up the Constitution? That's the founding document of our country. But, some people, it's obviously a political document also. So, I mean, it depends on what controversy you're talking about to blanket say yes or no is impossible. You have to get into the weeds with that question.
On that note,
Thanks for your time.
yeah, you gotta go to bus
Appreciate
duty.
that.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you for being smart.